another episode of The Code Career with me, Cameron Blackwood. Today's guest is Tom Groombridge. Tom is actually one of the first bootcamp graduates in the UK, so he was one of the first people to go through the process of learning to code in a matter of weeks, rather than going to a computer science degree and going down that conventional route. So he's got a fascinating story to tell. In the years since this, he's become a senior software engineer, but it hasn't been without some bumps on the way, and he'll tell you all the lessons he's learned from that experience. If you're currently trying to break into tech, or if you're even just curious, Tom's episode would be particularly good because he's actually running a course for people that are very new to the industry. So listen in for more details. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and remember, the best way to get in touch with me for feedback or ideas is via our Discord server. You can find a link to that in the description. But for now, grab a coffee, push those commits, and enjoy the show. Hi Tom, thanks so much for joining me today for the first in-person Code Career podcast. It's an honour.
Thank you, Cameron. Yeah, I'm super excited, and I couldn't turn down the opportunity to come up to Edinburgh.
Well, you fancy like a bit of rain, coldness, high winds.
We have picked the coldest month, I feel, and we haven't packed accordingly.
Oh no!
So we've been wandering around the city, freezing, but thoroughly enjoying ourselves, but very chilly.
Yeah, it's a great city, but It is very, very windy. So for listeners who aren't familiar with who you are, do you want to give a bit of a overview about who you are, what you spend your days doing?
Yeah, sure. So I am a senior software developer at a bank called Zopa. Zopa was originally one of the first peer-to-peer lenders, and have now moved into this sort of new age bank industry. I actually started at Zopa about 6.5, 7 years ago as a junior developer, and have been there ever since, sort of rising through the ranks, and are now a senior engineer, and absolutely loving it still.
Fantastic. And also as well, there's obviously your other project as well.
There is. So I absolutely love teaching, and from my background of learning to code, I learned at a boot camp and learned quite late on, and have been teaching over the last few years anyone who's interested to learn a bit about software development or tech in general. And from that has spawned this Tom Teaches Tech company, where we support people from absolutely zero knowledge up to the place where they are thinking about maybe making a career in tech and beyond, and now about to start running part-time boot camps for these people to make the leap into the software development industry.
Fantastic, because you come from a boot camp background yourself, but you must be fairly on in the boot camp scene then.
Yeah, absolutely. When I joined, so I did a boot camp called Makers Academy, and I think Makers was one of the first boot camps out there. And when I joined them, I think I was in the second cohort, so I was probably in the first sort of 10 people to do this course. And it sounded bonkers. It was, their whole thing was learn to code in 3 months, get a job and start earning money straight away. And at the time I was 19, and I thought, I sort of humming and ahhing, do I go to university? And I think I was going to go study politics at Birmingham. And I really wasn't sure why I was going to do that. I think I just got a position and thought, yeah, great, I'll do that. And instead I went to Makers Academy and did this course. To the surprise, I think, my parents as well. They weren't sure, like, hang on, are you sure you want to do this? It's a lot of money, and what are you going to get out at the end of it? And actually, it's probably the best thing I've ever done. Learning to code has opened so many doors that I didn't even know existed. But I felt it was a big risk at the time. It wasn't a proven concept in the industry which I didn't know at the time, obviously, because I had no understanding of the world of tech, but it wasn't common for people to sort of do these boot camps and get jobs. So it was a risk looking back on it, but at the time it was a fantastic experience and a lot of hard work. But yeah, I would recommend for people to learn to code because the industries are out there now.
Brilliant. We could have ended up in halls together because I went to Birmingham.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you saw. Yeah. What year would you have gone?
I would have gone 2012, I believe.
Oh, you would have been a year above me. But
okay.
Probably could have ended up bumping into each other on campus. It's I mean, Birmingham's great, but I do think that certainly my earnings and experience would be better if I just, instead of going to uni, just gone to a boot camp. But I don't regret. I always go over this on the podcast. I don't regret. I did a business degree.
Yeah.
I don't regret it. But sometimes I wish, oh man, it'd be great to have that extra experience by now.
Yeah, I think if I did go to university, I wouldn't have regretted it either.
Yeah. I mean, UOB, the student union's great. Like
Exactly.
the drinking was fun,
Yeah.
sports night. The lectures, not so much, but it was great.
And I've had, I have older siblings who both went to university, and I sort of grew up in that environment of watching them go to uni, having great fun. And it was all, for me growing up, it was always on the cards to go to university. But when it got to the point where I had to make a decision, I really wasn't sure why I wanted to go. And obviously the fees had gone up by then.
Yeah.
And it was a massive financial investment. But yeah, I think, everyone's got to find their own way. At that age, I think a lot of people are sort of fumbling around in the dark, not sure what they want to do. But yeah.
Well, it's a brave decision to go and do that. It's quite impressive. And I mean, yeah, the loan thing is, I mean, I won't say on the podcast how much I still owe, but I looked yesterday and oh no.
I know.
Think very carefully if you've just left school. I'm not saying going to university is a bad thing. I still encourage it, especially if it's good uni. But think very carefully about how much you have to pay back and when, and don't take all the maintenance if you don't need it, because it is a loan. Anyway, this isn't a personal finance podcast, and this isn't like Cam's financial regrets podcast, because that could go on a long time. And you've come all the way to Edinburgh not to hear about my personal finance woes. So let's go along with the quickfire questions. Obviously, this is a common fixture on the Coder Career now, so it's always interesting to compare notes to previous guests. And obviously, you've come through meeting Ben Reed and meeting me via him.
Yeah.
So Ben had some really cool answers to this. So curious to see how yours stack up as well. What was your first ever computer?
Yeah, so I was thinking long and hard about my answer to this question, and I do remember Ben's answer being very exciting. I think he was quite young when he got his first computer, and for me growing up, I wasn't really interested in computers at all. So I didn't really own my own computer. I borrowed maybe my parents' computer to, go on MSN or Bieber or whatever it was at the time. But I only really started getting into technology at sort of just before I started the boot camp. So really my first computer was when I was sort of 18, 19 years old. And I got a MacBook Pro, sort of a 13-inch, sort of a mid 2012 edition. And it was really the only reason I got it was because they sort of said, if you want to do these boot camps, you do need to get yourself a laptop or a MacBook. So yeah, really up until that age, I never really owned my own computer.
It's pretty wild. So you literally got a computer to code. That is very
it was. Looking back on it, you think, what were you thinking? But at the time it was all very exciting. I think when you're young, you believe you can really do anything. So yeah, we just sort of dove into it and had to get a laptop, or else I wouldn't have been able to learn.
Fantastic. And in terms of your favourite tech city, you're from London, right? And you live there now.
Yeah.
Is London that, or is it elsewhere?
It's hard to look past London. I've sort of lived and worked in London for close to sort of 9 years now. And the tech scene is enormous. You obviously have a lot of the big companies there, but there are so many exciting, companies doing a lot of exciting stuff in London. And you go into these office buildings and you hear of companies you've never heard of doing actually amazing things. I do love the tech scene, and there's a great community there for meetups. I have worked in other cities. So with Zopa, we work a bit in Barcelona, and Barcelona is a very exciting city. And so vibey as well, so much to do. So I would recommend to anyone, if you're looking for somewhere to go for a bit, Barcelona is a great opportunity. I am actually going to Lisbon next month to go and work out there for a bit, which I'm super excited about. I've heard amazing things about Lisbon, never done it. But for me, I think I'll stick with London as being, it's a massive tech hub now.
It doesn't really get much better than London.
No,
I've obviously left, but I miss it, and it is very cool. Like the tech scene down there.
Lisbon, do you get a chance to go down still?
Yeah. So by the time this podcast comes out, I think I will now again be working for a London-based company.
Yeah.
So whilst I'll be up here in Edinburgh, and listeners know I love my Silicon Glen, and it is great up here. But it'll be great to be back down in London every now and again. I don't see myself moving back down, but Yeah, it'll be cool. So potentially by the time this comes out, or very close to it, I'll be working as an engineer at Holland and Barrett. So this is the announcement.
Amazing.
Hopefully, I've told everyone at work.
Fantastic. Yeah, congratulations.
By this point, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to get started. And Lisbon's an interesting one because that must be the 10th time it's come up on the podcast.
Yeah.
There are big things happening there. I've never visited. We're talking about going this year actually. And
Yeah.
it'll be really cool.
Yeah. I've actually joined this sort of online community called Nomad List, and it sort of ranks the cities of best places to go and work as like a remote developer. And Lisbon just keeps popping up. I think it's good value for money. Obviously, you get fantastic weather pretty much all year round. And food. I mean, a massive thing for myself and my partner is we absolutely love food. The Lisbon food scene looks ridiculous. So we're very excited to do it.
Yeah, Christian, who was on here a few weeks ago, was saying steakhouses and seafood are where you want to go in Lisbon. Also handy as well because it is literally on our time zone here in the UK. So,
I know.
that is great because you hear about all these people. Like, I always wonder how these people that move to Thailand or Vietnam. It's like, that sounds great, like great weather, like cheap cost of living. But how do you deal with being like 9 hours like out of sync with the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, a few years ago, I have a brother and he lives in Sydney, and he had his first child, and I decided to go out and sort of introduce myself to this new member of the family, but decided to work at the same time. So, I went to Zopa and said, I need to go out, and we came to some sort of arrangement where I would work 4 hours on London time and 4 hours on Sydney time. And I thought, oh, great, fantastic. Went out and found it really hard. Trying to sort of set your day up again and say, right, I'm going to work 4 hours and then I'm going to, take the middle of the day off. And then I'm going to go have dinner with my brother. And then I've got to go back to work again for 4 hours. It's very hard to get yourself into that body clock.
Yeah, for me, dinner as well is the hard limit. Anything after that, I can't code. Probably because I have a beer with it. But
exactly,
there's something psychological, and I've the kind of something interesting. If you chronicle the coder career, you will have heard about how I've gradually become a morning person.
Yes.
In the first podcast with Nico, I'm telling him, I'm trying to become a morning person. I'm trying to get out of bed by 8:30. Now I'm getting to the point where I'm at 6:30 now, and I'm gradually getting to the point where I'm coding in the morning. Because I just can't code past dinner time. Like, it's impossible for me. Everyone's different, but
everyone is different, and I think you're not always set in that way as well. I'm very much an evening person. I would love to be a morning person. My partner is a real morning person. But at the moment I just can't get. I think my brain works best in the evenings, and I might just turn the laptop on at sort of 11 o'clock and do a couple of hours just because I can, I suppose.
It's another tally for night hours then, because one of the quickfire questions is
of course,
early bird or night owl, and so I think early birds are just winning, but I think that's because the recruiters I have on my show all tend to be early birds.
I see,
and it's probably it's still 70% developers, but it's like the 30% recruiters I think push it towards the early birds. So most devs do still seem to be night owls. And when you are working, be it late at night, be it in Australia, what kind of music do you like to listen to?
Yeah, so I feel like I cannot code without something on.
Yeah.
It really sets me up to be able to, it gets me in the zone. And it really varies. So I go through like a couple of months at a time listening to something. And at the moment, I don't know if you've heard of it, but NPR, radio station in America, they do these tiny desk sort of music gigs, and they get an artist in for 15 minutes and literally into their office, and they put them in the corner in this tiny desk. And they play a couple of songs, and it's fantastic. I love live music, and for me at the moment, that is something I keep going back to. And I'm not always listening to new people. I have sort of some favorites I love going back to. But again, that will change, and probably the only consistent thing I listen to when I'm coding is like lo-fi hip hop. Absolutely, yeah. If I'm stuck or in a rut, it's quite nice. It calms me down and makes me feel like I can start again and have a clean state if I'm struggling with some code.
Yeah, definitely. I always end up coming back to that. Drum and bass as well is a big one.
Yeah.
That I end up coming back to. And obviously, we talked about how for someone that doesn't actually have a computer science degree, you got into code at a very young age, younger than someone who did a computer science degree, because you started working as a 19-year-old. But before that, casting back to maybe the primary school days, what did you want to do for a job?
Well, I've always been a sports fanatic.
Oh, nice.
And no matter what that sport is, I will watch it.
Yeah, because we were chatting rugby offline.
We were. And growing up, I come from a family that played a lot of hockey.
Oh, nice.
And I've played hockey since sort of the age of 4. But really, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a cricket player.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. One of my sort of most memorable memories of sport is watching the '05 Ashes when England won it. For people who don't know, England beat Australia in the UK for the first time in 20 years. And for me, that was it. That's all. After watching that, all I wanted to do was, become an Andrew Flintoff. Unfortunately, the ability wasn't quite there. So the older I got, the more I realised maybe cricket isn't for me. But yeah, as a kid, sport was always the one. And still play to this day, but unfortunately not to the level I would have dreamed to as a child.
I was absolutely useless at cricket. I loved sports, but I think it requires such a degree of concentration when you're fielding. And when I was not the best at keeping concentration as a child, like the thing about rugby or ice hockey, which are the two main sports I played, it's kind of like you always need to be paying attention because at any time something could smack you. Whereas in cricket, there's more gaps. But then if you're really not paying attention, it can end very badly.
Absolutely.
I can't remember. There's some famous quote. It's like cricket is 90% boredom, 10% fear.
Well, yeah, and they're probably exactly right. I played a lot of cricket, and I was a bowler. So when I batted, I was a terrible batsman. And unfortunately never got over the fear of the ball hitting me.
It's understandable. I think cricket players are underrated in toughness. It takes some guts to go up against a top bowler. I wouldn't want to. It's terrifying.
No, not at all. When I went at college, my school was a very good cricket school, and we used to have some overseas players come over, and I always remember this chap called Jimmy. He was a West Indian. He was about 6'9", 6'10", and he used to come in and bowl. And honestly, I'd almost be in tears in the net. I just want to get out of there, please.
That's when the hamstring goes or something. Exactly, no, I can't do it today, lads. Yeah, I've pulled that one before. No pun intended. No. But yeah, it's cricket's a good one, and I'm not a massive cricket fan, but I do remember that 05 series, and that was pretty iconic.
Yeah.
Weird as a Scot to be backing England in that, but
I know.
The Scottish cricket team is so bad. You've just got to find someone to back.
Yes,
right.
But you've had a good. As things have gone for you, I think you made the World Cup this year, and that was exciting.
Yeah, just about. Yeah. I'm more or less. I make an exception with the obviously. Despite the accent, there's a whole anyone but England thing.
Yes,
but I make an exception in cricket.
There you go.
Really, there's no rivalry to speak of because we are so bad at cricket compared to England. But yeah. So back into tech. Obviously, we talked about makers. Obviously, you were like we were saying, you were on the first cohort. How was that process, picking up programming and then getting into your first job? Do you want to talk about how that went for you?
Absolutely. So with Makers Academy, I really went in blind. I decided this is what I want to do, or give it a go at least. And really, I remember turning up on day one, still not really sure what that entailed. What was I going to do with day one of learning how to code? And I think day one was sort of an intro to Git, an intro to the command line. And I always remember walking away from day one just in tears, just being like, oh my goodness, what have I sort of set myself up for here? This is impossible. I was learning basic, command lines, CD, ls, whatever. And it just I couldn't fathom in my head how to do this. And it was terrifying. And I always say to people when I'm teaching and they're struggling, it is a terrifying journey. You are not going to breeze through this. If learning to code was easy, everyone would do it. But it is so learnable. You just have to persevere. And for me, I think sort of with the maker's journey, it was a 12-week course and it was full time. So it was, 9 in the morning till 6 at night. And really you'd be coding in the evenings. And I think for me, until maybe week 6, I was still lost. And then suddenly just, by persevering and keep going, I think something just sort of clicked in my head, and then learning became easier from that point on. So from week 6 to 12, when you're starting to talk about more in-depth stuff, I mean, the course was Ruby on Rails.
Yeah.
Because at the time, that was the hot language, and people were, it was great for startups because you could build things very quickly.
Yeah, it's so quick, isn't it?
So quick. And yeah, soon, we started learning Rails at sort of week 6, and things started to click. And, I wouldn't say by the end of the 12 weeks, I was a fully fledged developer ready to go. But yeah, definitely if you'd have told me after 6 weeks, in 12 weeks, I would have graduated and been able to build applications myself, I would have laughed.
There's some kind of snowball effect there, isn't it? Where eventually you just hit some inflection point where suddenly it just clicks. And I really relate to what you're saying. Like for me, like the ironic thing is anyone that's worked with me knows that I'm the React man. It's my bread and butter. It's what I love. But it took me so long to get to grips with React. I didn't get it. For the longest time, I didn't understand JSX and why that worked the way it did. But you just hit this point where you click and it's like, oh, hold on a minute, I just get it now. Same thing with the command line environment. Like that took me so long to understand.
Absolutely. And I think when I am teaching people, it's all about making sure that they are staying positive through those times. Because it's very hard to say to someone who is struggling, look, you will get through this. Like you will start to understand and things will start to click. And then when they get there, they do agree with you. But at that moment in time, it's about making sure that they are supported enough and feel like, no, we are in this together, and you can push through this barrier. Because I do believe, like you said, you do suddenly sort of open the door and things start to make sense. It's just persevering through that time.
This may be a controversial point for me to make, and I'm curious to see how you feel about it. I believe nobody on earth is a natural coder. Nobody's naturally good at it. It's just everyone perseveres, and it might feel like when you're new to it, you think everyone else is a natural at this because you're so self-conscious of what you don't know versus what everyone else already knows. I think nobody's actually a natural, but people get worked up and they think they can't do this. But actually, everyone's been going through it privately. Like there's that old saying that I've probably modified here, where you see everyone else's highlight reel, but you see your own blooper reel. Like
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I tend to agree with you. I think a big part of learning to code is learning to think like the computer is, like the application is. And I think that doesn't come to many people or anyone sort of instinctively. You have to, it took me a long time to, even when you're sort of Googling what you want to do, how do you ask Google, what problem you're trying to solve? I think like probably fundamentally, that's one of the biggest barriers to people succeeding is you've got to learn how to think. Again, you kind of have to take back everything that you've maybe learned at school and sort of start thinking as the computer's thinking, which I just don't think is a human trait.
It's not. And the funny thing is, like, especially as, you're not really a career changer as such. I mean, you came through the bootcamp side, but for me, like, I didn't really do humanities at uni. I did business, but it's on the spectrum of that. And for someone who maybe did do humanities, say you did we talked politics earlier. Yeah. Like politics is all about nuance, and skill is academically. The skill is like making a clever argument and like talking about the different arguments behind stuff in favor, against, and thinking creatively and outside the box. Whereas in computing, you probably don't really want to think outside the box. You want to think sequentially,
absolutely,
and logically, and it's tough to flip around that way of thinking.
Yeah, you're right. It's logical. Like coding is logical, and when you've been in it a while, it's common sense. But of course, it's learning those traits and learning sort of what the capacity of the application is. And really, for me, it's taken me a long time to understand the differences in coding languages as to why some are better than others in certain marketplaces.
I'm definitely still on that journey myself. Like, I think a major weak point of me, like I'm way too focused on the JavaScript ecosystem. Like I'm trying to get better at other sides of things. I mean, this isn't actually a question I put on the plan, so hopefully not putting you in the spot here, but let's say the two most popular, I'm sure would agree, the two most popular languages right now,
Yeah.
JavaScript and Python.
Absolutely.
Outside of those two, what's your bet that people should learn if they're curious to pick up another, if they already know one of those two?
That is a very good question. Gosh, what would I say? A lot of what we do at Zopa, we write a lot of Kotlin,
Okay, nice.
and it's not something I've ever really dove into, but the people who write it think it's great. It comes from that Java family.
Yeah.
And I think
It's commonly used for Android apps, isn't it, Kotlin?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a really good question. I think obviously mobile development is massive as
Absolutely,
well.
yeah.
And there's so many frameworks out there now for mobile development. I am a big React guy.
Yeah.
I think one of the two languages you should be learning, you are right, is Python and JavaScript.
Yeah.
Or even, I sort of get that question, should you be learning JavaScript or should you be learning TypeScript? I still think you should be learning JavaScript first.
I agree, yeah. And then TypeScript is a bolt-on.
Exactly, yeah. But it's a good question, and I don't really have an answer. I think in that way.
Yeah, because I'm not sure either. Because I mean, there's Rust, but then I've heard mixed things recently about that. Solidity as well. I mean, but I'm worried that would be them biting off more than you can chew if you're new. So maybe if you're already experienced, then it could be worth going down that route. But I agree. Like maybe like with mobile, could be a good way to go.
Yeah, and I think like you're fundamentally right. Python, JavaScript, it covers most things for you, and then you should be going out and seeing what really gets you going, because there are so many languages out there. I probably know hardly any of them, or even the names of half of them, but it's about, once you have those fundamental tools, go out and see what you're excited about.
Absolutely. I mean, the greatest products ever made are often built by experiments, like I think something that parodies this, but it's a show that you can learn a lot from, Silicon Valley. You can learn a lot from it, but also the way they portray how Richard accidentally makes a compression algorithm that's incredible just by him trying to make a music app. Like if you're just messing about and trying out new tools, that's an amazing way to learn, and you never know what you might stumble upon.
I agree, and actually really the reason software development was so attractive to me was you can go and build things. And so after college, I did a year in Australia. I was lucky enough to be able to go and play hockey for a year in Australia. And when I was there, I got a job at a co-working space for a startup, and they were, and the job was go and find us sales, cold calling, and
that's rough.
I have to say, I think I lasted about an hour on day one, and I just couldn't do it. But in this co-working space, obviously, are all these startups, and I think that's where the inspiration for me came to try this, because all these startups have all these, these men and women sat around computers writing code, and it was the first sort of insight into the world of coding and startups, and really I got hooked on, gosh, I could actually learn these skills and then go and build something myself. Which I think is what draws a lot of people. Everyone, we were saying, before this, you tell people if you're a software developer and they go, oh, I've got an app idea, or I've got this great business idea. And I think, every person on this planet has at one point, their great idea. And I think people are now realizing, actually, I could learn those skills
100%.
And go and try it myself.
Yeah. And that's what I like about, I feel like increasingly in this sort of Gen Z, they're with stuff like TikTok, I've been quite exposed to what they're doing. And a lot of it is check out what I've done, and there's quick bites of what they're learning. And I do feel like this generation is hopefully becoming a bit more digitally native. I was a bit more worried that they would actually be not great at coding because they're so used to everything being so easy. Whereas maybe our generation, and maybe even probably actually people more like 10 years older than us, had to do a lot of the grunt work themselves with computers. Like, I mean, we grew up in that sort of like, because we're basically the same age. I mean, we grew up in the noughties basically, where stuff was quite advanced. But like we had to do a bit. I mean, if you're using computers in the 90s, I mean, Ben's episode is a great example of that, where he was talking about how him and his mate had to set up that internet protocol, and
Oh
it
yeah,
actually ran out like a
absolutely.
huge bill on his mum's account, which is, I think, episode 15. I might be wrong on that one, but worth listening to. I think maybe I was worried about that, but it seems like actually Gen Z are getting stuck in.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm not a massive fan of the social medias, but with my company, Tom Teaches Tech, it's a great way of accessing a lot of people.
Definitely,
You know, there's lots of positives to social media. We all know the negatives, but you know, I start to get these reels on my social media of coding, and it's super exciting. But I do think there's still that. You're right. There's that that thought process of learn to code in 10 days, and then your life's set forever. You know?
If only it was that simple.
If only it was that simple. You know, I think people sell the dream, and actually a lot of work has to go into it. But again, it's so satisfying when you do succeed. But yeah, I think it's going to be, the tech game is only growing, and there are jobs today that weren't 10 years ago. And it's starting to be cool, you know, like over the last sort of, I think, probably 5 years, it's become super cool to learn to code and have these skills. And that's only going to grow.
Absolutely. And I mean, kind of related to what we were talking about before as well, but now as well. I mean, if you're already established in the industry and there are jobs in 10 years that there aren't now, but that also means that, you know, we talked about Ruby on Rails. How many Ruby on Rails jobs are there now? How do you roll with the punches and learn new technologies? What would you identify as good strategies to deal with this?
Yeah. So again, you know, gosh, I learned Ruby on Rails in 2012, and my first few roles were Ruby on Rails jobs, and now the market is dominated by these JavaScript framework, you know, for front ends. And I don't think there is a crystal ball you can look into and say, this is what you need to do. You've just got to always stay on top of it. You've always got to engage with other people who are learning other technologies, see where the industry is going. For Zopa, a few years ago, originally we were a Rails application for our customers. And of course, it ended up being this mammoth application. And the JavaScript framework started to blow up. You know, React, Angular, and we were kind of deciding, you know, which way do we go with this? Do we focus on Angular or do we focus on React? And for a long time, we were trying to come up with a resolution as to which worked, and we picked React in the end. And it's probably the first time that there's been so much backing for a framework. These technologies, they come and go, and React seems to have really solidifies itself in the market.
I wonder if and when it will be killed and what by.
Well, that's the thing. You just never know, do you?
It must happen. Like Flash died, and that was so ubiquitous. I can never pronounce that word. Ubiquitous.
Better than I would say it.
But Flash was everywhere, and that died. So it will go eventually, but it's just when. Is it too big to fail?
Well, that's the thing. Is it too big to?
That's what I said about Lehman Brothers.
Exactly. Yeah, of course. You never want to say it's never, going to be around, but it is backed by some of the biggest tech companies in the world. But there will be something that comes along that is more exciting, and there are other more exciting technologies out there, but they might not be able to handle these massive companies.
There's just nothing like the ecosystem that React has, and it's the best. It is the number one thing that a junior developer should learn, really. If they want to get a job, it's the quickest way to make an impact. If you know you want to be an engineer, then definitely just pick up React. Once you've already learned vanilla JavaScript, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. It is the fastest growing technology out there, coding language, and there are jobs, all over the place with React. And if you're doing the maths game, if you want to get a job, you pick the industry that's looking for the most amount of employees.
Absolutely.
And React at the moment is probably that technology.
The only caveat I would say with this, and it's a bit of a weird point, especially in the age of remote working, but if you're in a market where it tends to be only on-site roles, then definitely double check that all the companies in your area do use React, because I've given this advice before, and then I've realized actually I should probably be careful here, because a lot of the time, particularly in non-tech hubs, it's a lot of like Java and C# and like Angular jobs. So definitely worth like double checking in your individual market. But for the majority of listeners, definitely React would be the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. All companies have their own technologies.
Yeah.
I don't think any two companies will be running exactly the same tech stacks. So it's important to look out. And also, if you're looking at front end development, then React is where you should be going.
Yeah.
But if you are looking down the back end industry, it's probably not where you want to focus so much of your time. You focus more on the Python. Yeah. Python would be, you talk about languages that have been around forever. Python has been around for
I think Python be older than both of us. I mean,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's a great language to learn. And I think, I learned Ruby first, and Ruby was very similar to Python. So when I picked up Python, it was much easier because a lot of the fundamentals cross over.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked a lot about what you write in, what times of day you work in, what music you listen to while you do it, and where you like to be. But what is actually a typical day in the life of a senior software engineer at Zopa?
Yeah, so I think the great thing about this industry is no 2 days are the same. So even though you're following a structure with your days, you're never dealing with the same problems. You're always looking at something else, or a different part of the code base, or thinking about how this product is going to improve the lives of customers. But for me, the first thing I've written down is coffee. I need coffee. So the first thing I will do, when if I'm working from home or I'm in the office, go grab myself a coffee. I will not be able to do any work until I've got my caffeine hit. And after that, we then start with a stand-up. So, our team, at the moment, our team is about 10 people. We will do a stand-up. It lasts 15 minutes to half an hour. We have a catch-up and understand what we've done the previous day, what we're doing today, anything that's blocking us, if anyone in the team can support us with that. And then after that, most of the time, for me, it's about getting down and doing some coding. I think with coding, you need to start giving yourselves a couple of hours at least of real dedicated time to get into the tech. So I try and do that. At the same time, I'm supporting people with PRs. We have some more junior developers in the team, in the company, and we're there to support their growth and help them improve their skills. So we spend a lot of time PR reviewing. And then obviously by that time, it's sort of lunchtime. We have, I do really believe it's important to get up and walk away from the laptop for an hour, go outside, have a walk, get some food, reset your brain. If you sit at the laptop all day, you're going to end up not being that productive. Well, for me personally, that's what would happen. And then really after lunch, I try and get back down and do a couple of hours of coding alongside meetings. I mean, one of the great things about Zopa, the company I work for, is we aren't just employed as developers. We're employed to really think about the customer and to understand, what benefits are coming from the product we're creating. So just as much as I'm coding, we're talking to designers, we're talking to customer service, trying to really understand the problems our customers are having and how we can improve that for them, which is great for me, especially as I enjoy the startup culture. I enjoy being able to take something from 0 to 1, being able to engage in those early point discussions about the product, and the best way of improving efficiency, or helping customers who are maybe in some financial difficulty. It's a big part of the job. I think great software developers, not that I'm putting myself in great software developer territory at all, but I think really great software developers aren't just brilliant coders. They think outside of their remit. They're not there just to clock in, do a job, clock out at the end of the day. It's about, you might be writing some code and actually feel like, I'm not sure this is actually going to improve the customer experience that much, and then taking that information to people who are designing that product and having a really engaging conversation about it.
Absolutely. And this is a question I've asked a couple of people before, but I'm quite excited to hear your answer, because this is literally the exact position you were in almost 10 years ago. Let's say you have an 18-year-old relative that's left school, not sure what to do, but they know they want to get into tech, probably a software engineer. What do you tell them to do? They've got no computer science A level or anything.
Yeah, so I think if because at the time that's where I was, and I would say that you've got to go out and experiment. I think you've got to go and look at all the opportunities that are out there, be that a front end developer, back end, full stack, data analyst, whatever, and really see what interests you. I think it's an industry where you need to really be interested in it, because it's a lot of hard work. And if you're going to be putting the hard work in, there's going to be days when you need to be able to motivate yourself to do that. And the only way you can do that is if you're genuinely interested in that area. And I think once you've found that area, you then need to take back to the beginning and start thinking about, how do I learn? And I think I don't think there is one specific way everyone should learn to code. I think everyone has their own way of learning. Some people can go, right, I'm just going to go and teach myself, crack on. And I think that's amazing. It's not something I could ever have done. They just sort of find some courses, they do them online. They don't need to interact with anyone. But then for me, I need someone to bounce questions off to. When I'm really struggling, I need someone to come and show me where to look or what I should be looking for. And then once you've worked out how you learn, then you can go out and decide, am I going to pursue this? And if I am, this is the route I should be taking.
I think you raised a good point as well about the "are you truly interested" point, because someone I follow in the sort of tech talk community, as we call it on TikTok, he made one of the American guys, I've forgotten his name now, but he made a great video the other day about actually so many people have come to him for him to be their mentor, and have said, you know what, I just want to get into tech because of money. It has to be a bit more than that. Like when I was 18, I thought I wanted to be an investment banker. I really don't have. I have a passing interest in finance. Like I'm curious about how that world works, but I don't love it as much as I would want to do it because it's my passion for 100 hours per week. I would do it because I want to make a load of money. And I needed to, even getting into code, I did have to ask myself that question: Cam, are you just doing this because this is a well-paying industry? Like I didn't do that in the end, but I think it's going to be harder for you if you're just chasing money, especially because the money. I mean, without actually revealing numbers, I've only now just got to the point where I'm significantly making more money than I did as a recruiter, and I left recruitment in 2018. So it takes a while.
Yeah, I think it's very, especially as a youngster, it's very hard to look past the money. And I think the older you get and the more you actually are spending week in, week out in a job, the money is obviously it's important, because anyone who says you do it for free, well, you've got to have a lifestyle and support people. But if you are spending that much time, and really with software development, you are spending a lot of time, because you might be coding in a day, but you do need to keep up to date with technologies. If you are doing it for the money, you will just not enjoy your career. You've got to have a real interest in, you don't have to, I don't think you have to have an interest in a specific language or be really interested in, coding itself. But if you have a real interest in building things, in solving problems, I know it's a bit of a cliche to keep saying solving problems, but then it's a great industry to be in. And yes, it is a very well paid industry if you're good at your job. So that comes along with it. But I don't think you should ever be making decisions based on just the money.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I was going to say, I wonder if there's a way for someone to dip their toe in the industry and think, is this for me, if they don't know that much about it? I mean, could you tell me anything about that?
Well, it's good you ask, Cam. So with Tom Teaches Tech, our first course we ever launched was an intro to coding. And the reason I launched this course was a lot of people at Zopa and outside of Zopa, were coming to me, and I was teaching them just the basics of coding. And in the end, it's turned into a course. It's turned into a 4-week intro to coding course, where it's for people who have, they don't have to have any knowledge of coding whatsoever. It's an opportunity for people to dip their toe in, like you say, into the industry, to learn some of the basics of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and also like data and APIs, and really just get an understanding as to whether or not this is something they're interested in. Now, there are so many courses out there, so many online tutorials, and they are fantastic. I don't take anything away from that. But the one thing they lack is the ability to support people if they don't understand. So, you're listening to a Udemy tutorial or something. If what the teacher is saying doesn't make sense to you, you're then lost. Yeah. There's no feedback. There's no, well, hang on a minute, could you just explain that in another way to me? And with these intro to coding courses, they are live on Zoom, and they're for only about 6 people in the course, and they're very interactive. I am teaching the fundamentals of these coding languages. We are coding projects all together, but if you are stuck, then we take a step back, re-explain it, try and understand how you would learn, and give you a bit more of a path to actually walking away after 4 weeks and either going, I'm not sure if technology is for me or coding's for me, or you walk away and go, actually, no, I'm more interested. I want to learn more.
That sounds fantastic, because it is a huge commitment and a huge risk to jump into a boot camp or something. Absolutely. Like a full one. Like, I know people that did that and then decided it wasn't for them, because it's not for everyone, and that's fine. But it's such a huge risk to do that versus, and actually, because my course was kind of a boot camp, it was a bit of a in between. And we ended up in the quite unfortunate situation where there were people who'd self-taught for like a year, like me. A couple of people that had been software engineers in other countries had come over to adapt to the UK market, and then just a few people that had never even touched HTML before. And I did just think it was really tough for them, and a couple of them ended up dropping out because it was just too difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the people who I talk to, they actually come from that background of, I did a boot camp, and 3 weeks in, I quit. Because it was so intense. I wasn't quite sure what I was expecting. In this bootcamp, there were like 20 people. And there's 20 people in this cohort, but then the teacher's probably teaching 2 or 3 cohorts. So we might have, 40, 50 people in there under them. And, they'll have some support teachers as well, but they weren't getting that personal feedback. They weren't, I don't think the teachers were so much understanding how each individual student taught was, learns best.
And the problem with the assistants as well, they're often recent graduates of the program.
Yeah, absolutely.
They might be able to code, but they might have picked up bad habits, and they will probably find it quite tough to explain why something works the way it does.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, I think it's important that, I'm not saying these boot camps don't work. These boot camps work, but they work for a certain type of person. Yeah. And sometimes I think they are taking too many different types of people who learn very differently. Yeah. And I get a lot of those people who go, look, it's almost scared me off ever trying code again. But then we go, well, look, why don't we do some sessions? Why don't, I run a coaching program on the side to support people who have maybe dropped out, who need a bit more confidence to build themselves back up, to get back into learning how to code. And it's really about taking that personal approach with these people. They are investing, like you said, a lot of money in this. And if it doesn't work, that's a lot of money down the drain. Yeah. These aren't
plus the lost income as well, because you have to quit your job.
Well, exactly. These guys are taking at least 3 months off, for these full-time intense boot camps. And then, gosh, it might take you another 6 months to
take a long time. Like, I know someone I have a friend who, I won't say his name, but it took him 18 months to get his first job, and he's a great developer. Yeah. Like, he's just not the best at interviewing.
No. And again, that is a skill in itself.
Yeah.
Tech interviews are hard.
Yeah.
I don't think you can shy away from the fact, and, it is getting a bit insane how many interviews you have to do to land a job. We actually looked at this at Zopa and realized that we're doing too many interviews. We need to narrow this down. We need to make this easier, like more comfortable for the person interviewing. And you should know after 2, maybe 3 interviews, whether or not that person is the right person for your company. You can do 6, 7, 8 rounds in some places. It's mad.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have literally just been through this process myself.
Yes.
And put it this way, I accepted a company that turned me around within 5 days.
Yeah.
And we had 2 interviews.
Yeah.
Whereas there are other ones that we're talking about 6, 7 interviews. It just didn't make any sense.
And it's such a competitive market for developers that if a developer's interviewing at 3, 4 places and you have 4 rounds and someone has 2 and they give you an offer after 2, they've lost that. The company that's doing it in 4 rounds, they've lost out on what is potentially a great developer.
Yeah, absolutely. And you obviously as well have, has it launched yet, your part-time bootcamp?
No,
as well?
so
because this is exciting. This is the solution to the problem.
This is the solution to the problem for some people. So off the back of I've run these courses for 6, 8 months now, and people have come out of that course and gone, I actually really want to do this. This is something I want to do, but I cannot quit my job. I can't do 3, 6, 9 months without a paycheck. And also I want to learn at a bit of a slower pace. And I want to learn in a way that feels personal to me. We can, once you understand that person, we can tailor a course to them. And this is where our part-time boot camps essentially have come from, where instead of doing it over 3 months, we're doing it over 6. And instead of it being full-time, it's 2 evenings a week of classes. And then we do suggest to people that they try and maybe take their hours down to 4 days a week and give themselves a full day on a Friday where they can work on projects, but also we will be there the whole day for them to get support from. Not being that we, in the rest of the week, we are there as well, but obviously people will be working. So, we have a Slack group and we can jump onto Zoom calls all week. But the idea is that they can really put some time in on a Friday to build up to hopefully after 6 months being in a position where they can start interviewing for jobs, or what we're seeing at the moment is companies are actually sponsoring employees to do this, and then will join the company again, but as a developer.
It's a fantastic strategy to get a developer role, get sponsored by a company. And also as well, you mentioned the 4-day-a-week thing, and this is something that I think is so underrated because, and I said earlier this wasn't a personal finance podcast, but this is a personal finance point. If you take a 20% pay cut to go 4 days a week, you're not going to lose 20% of your net pay because of how tax works.
Absolutely.
It's actually depending on your tax bracket, it could be as low as a 15% pay cut, which can be actually it's worth really considering that.
Exactly. And really, you're taking that cut to invest in yourself.
Yeah.
And if after 6, 9 months, you then have a role as a developer, that investment has paid off. And the sky's the limit at that point. I think it's so exciting for people who are joining the industry now as entry-level junior developers, because it is just blowing up.
Yeah, and it's not just money. The money's fantastic, obviously, and I'm now getting to a point where it's money that I really would have struggled to have made as a recruiter, even after 10 years now. But it's not just money; it's flexibility. Like if you have kids or something, it's an amazing job that you can do because it's remote friendly. Like companies are very forward thinking. Obviously, I touch on remote friendly. Maybe it's not that you want to spend more time with your kids. Maybe you want to jet set around the world all the time because a lot of companies will let you do it. Like it's so flexible, and it's like you don't need a different qualification for each country you move to. Like if you're a lawyer, you're gonna have to retrain each time. Even a doctor would have to retrain, and the human body's the same, right? But like for us, JavaScript is the same in Tokyo, Lagos, New York, trying to name more random cities, and London and Edinburgh.
Absolutely. And obviously the pandemic has meant that everyone is now either working from home full-time, part-time. But I don't know about you, but for me, it wasn't a massive jump. Technology, like Zopa were good at saying you don't have to be in every day before then, because we can do our jobs as well remote as we can in person. But now it has pushed it to a point of where you can go, well, actually, I don't even have to be in the same city if I don't have to be.
Exactly. I mean, for me, I'm 450 miles away.
Well, exactly.
Although I am actually a COVID native developer because COVID hit 4 weeks into my professional development
Right.
career. So
Yes.
it's, I've basically always been working from
Yeah.
home.
So you don't know
4
any
weeks
other way.
in, I caught COVID. Actually, fun fact about me, I think I was one of London's first
There you go.
COVID patient, well, not patients, COVID,
Yeah.
not victims either, person that had it, because I wasn't that ill, but yeah.
Yeah. I think it is an industry now. Well, it always has been, but it has been pushed by COVID to really being flexible. Do you want to travel? Yes. Travel. Keep your job. Do you want to go in the office? Yes, go in the office. Like you don't have to move away from the office. I love going. I go into the office 2 days a week, and I love going to the office because you get to reconnect with the company, reconnect with the people, and sort of really understand who you're working for again. But having that, I don't have any kids, but for people who have kids, being able to, drop them off at school and pick them up, or have them at home instead of having to take them to nursery every day, must be amazing.
Works so well. I have a pet as well. Like
Yeah.
I can now realistically have a dog. At some, I can't in this flat because my landlord won't let me. But soon. Yeah, and it's the options are then wide open, and and it's great as well because you can pick and choose. Like you like going into the office a couple of times a week. For me, it'd probably be more like once a month.
Yeah.
But make more of a day of it. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
it's the options are great, and if you do want a 5 day per week office job, they're out there. It's probably about 1% of developers that want to do that, but why not? You can do it.
And I was chatting to someone at the company who's quite senior, and we're just having a catch up, and openly admitted, actually, when I come to the office, because this was sort of when I was coming maybe once every 2-3 weeks, I don't actually get that much work done.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah,
that's why I said once a month.
Exactly. Yes, you don't want your employer to think you're not doing any work, but I don't actually get that much work done. But we both agree that's actually not a problem.
Yeah.
Because you might not be getting any like tangible work done, but you are re-engaging in the company, and getting to talk to your colleagues, and also sort of really understanding what you're doing your job for. And then you go away at the end of the day feeling super motivated again, which is great, because you need to still feel connected to your company, irrelevant of a lot of people say, well, I'm just writing code, so why can't you do that for anything, for anyone or any product? But really, if you really want to walk away at the end of the day or the year and say, actually, I've had a really good year, it will be because you're doing something that means something to you.
It's definitely healthy as well to go into the office every now and again. But actually, any remote workers listening, if you want to have a bit of fun before you meet your colleagues, tell half of them you're really tall and tell half of them you're really short.
Absolutely.
And just get especially for someone like me who's like 5'10", so pretty much bang on average. Like it's great to. I have told a few people I'm 6'6", and it's great to see the reactions.
It is true. You meet people on Zoom and then you meet them in person, and you go,
don't
"Oh
see
my
your colleagues'
goodness!"
legs.
No, you never realize how tall someone is.
Yeah. But it's a lot of fun to do that sort of thing. And my final question for you, more going back to your career, you've been in the industry for a while. Really interesting story, being probably one of the first few hundred bootcamp grads in the world. Really,
Yeah, maybe.
Like, what would you change about your career? I mean, obviously, assuming there was no butterfly effect.
Yes. So I was toying with this question for quite a while, and I was wondering what I was going to go into. And hindsight is wonderful, right? I would change a lot of things if I went back. For me, the first couple of years of me being a developer before I joined like a good structured company, I was kind of just fumbling around in the dark, not sure, where I wanted to go, what industry I wanted to go into. And my first job out of the academy was for a very small sort of sports betting company. And it was tiny. It was based in Notting Hill. And I joined as my first ever job. And there were 3 developers. And it wasn't a good experience for me. I actually ended up not passing probation at this place. And, it did take a hit to my confidence, as going, gosh, what am I, how am I good?
Do you know what? Literally the same thing happened to me. I still have such a good relationship with them.
Yeah.
Like one of them came on the Code of Career.
Okay.
Like one of the founders. But I had exactly the same thing. 3 developers, really small company, and I just bit off more than I could chew.
Absolutely. And I think with this company, I think they were looking for a mid-senior level developer at the cost of a junior, and it wasn't a very well-paid job, but it was a job, and to me that was the important thing. I had to, start earning some money. And when I got laid off, it really hit my confidence, and I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? And actually after that, I then sort of said, right, I'm going to just say yes to anything. And I actually went into the freelance game, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Wow, as a junior.
As a junior,
Yeah.
I went in and I got a hot desk at one of the Google offices up in Old Street near Shoreditch, and put my flyer up on the wall and said, freelance developer available, and ended up working again in the sports industry for like fantasy football. Nice. And yeah, just said I was well under experienced for this role, but I just said,
make it till you make it.
Till you make it a little bit. And I said, yeah, go on, I'll do it. And I did it, and I did it for like 6-7 months. Thoroughly enjoyed it, but never really grew sort of my own experience. I didn't feel like I still didn't know where I was going to end up or what I was going to do. And after that, when the contract ended, I found Zopa, and got a mentor, and had a way more structure to my career. And I think if I was going to give any information to people joining, I think like a mentor is one of the best things I think you can have.
Absolutely.
Find a company that is willing to give you a mentor, but also has a great structure and a great culture about it. There are, and I don't think that's hard to find. I think there are a lot of great companies with a lot of great culture, but they will set you on the right path. And I think if I had my time again, I enjoyed freelancing, but I would have found a company straight away that was going to be like, right, well, this is what the roadmap can look like for you. We will support you along this journey, and we will tell you where you should be focusing your efforts. Because I think probably my career probably took maybe a 2-year hit, because I was entering Zopa as a junior after 2 years of developing, where really I feel like I could have been sort of towards the mid realm if I'd have found that company earlier. But yeah, I just think like that support network is so important to anyone who's starting out.
Definitely. And, I think as well as experienced engineers, we have a responsibility to mentor as well.
Yeah.
Especially if we got mentored ourselves.
Absolutely.
So, it's a good experience. You can also learn a lot from your mentee, because they're the ones that are clued up on the best practices because they're new.
Well, that's the thing. We find a lot of juniors who join the companies, they are, they're more experienced than you with some technologies because they've just learned it. They've learned a new version, a new syntax. And yeah, I mean, the reason I am teaching is I love it. I genuinely think watching people succeed is addictive. You watch people who are, learning how to code, or they have a small challenge, and they, like they're building a JavaScript calculator, one of the very small things that they're learning, and it can take them a lot of time, and you have to support them through that. But when they succeed, you see it in their reaction that they are so proud of themselves, and they believe that they can do this. And that is such an addictive thing to watch and feel part of. And that's all the way through to mentoring people. I mentor people who are juniors moving into mid-level roles, which is a very different type of mentoring. But watching them succeed and seeing them like get that promotion, I like, that's what thrills me. And that's why I'm now teaching. We talked about, money over passion. Find your passion, and the money will probably come with it.
It's often the way, especially in tech. We're very blessed to, be able to often get both. Sadly, not quite to the point that our American cousins do, but things are getting better in the UK. Like,
absolutely.
I wonder if we're number 2 now. I mean, there's obviously Switzerland's. Maybe we're getting to the point where we're number 3 now, because the most recent the market. I mean, this whole conversation in and of itself, but the market has really kicked into a new gear in the last few months.
It really has. And companies are not having the office space as well, so they're not spending so much money on that. And it is a market where there is so much demand and not enough supply. There are so many roles available for developers, and there's just not enough developers.
Exactly. And for people listening and thinking, oh, I wish I was an experienced developer, that old adage, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The
Yeah.
second best time is now. Like,
Absolutely.
just get stuck in, because it's not like this is going anywhere. Like, certainly
Yeah.
not in the next
It's not a
20
fad.
years. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's, you know, supply and demand will shift a little bit, but like there's always, I can't see it really significantly changing for 20 years.
And those roles might change, but
Yeah.
they will be fundamental tech roles.
Yeah, you
And
might be a VR developer instead of a React
Exactly.
developer, but that's still really cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I would definitely say to anyone who's listening, who's going, you know, I'm not sure what to do next. Maybe I want to make a career change. Maybe I'm out of school and I don't know what to do. Just try it.
Yeah.
Because you could try it for, you know, 4 weeks on our course,
Yeah.
or you could try it, you know, you could watch some YouTube videos, or do a Udemy course or something like that. And you just don't know. Like, it might really spark something in you, but you didn't know. Like, I didn't know it existed for me.
Me neither.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Like, firstly, I didn't know the industry at all. I didn't really know that this existed. But secondly, I really didn't think of it as something I would be inspired to do. And it is. It's changed my life, from not really knowing what I wanted to do at all to now having a good career and very happy in a great company whilst doing things that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, and for me, it's the same thing. Like, I was miserable and depressed working in recruitment. It wasn't for me. I felt like I wasn't feeling fulfilled, and now I've been able to earn a lot more money than what I was doing. Live in a city that I love London, but I've got to move back up to Edinburgh, and I absolutely love it here. And be able to do it remotely and really scratch a part of my brain that wasn't getting scratched before. And that's not to knock recruiters; it just wasn't for me. But you know, it's changed my life as well, and it's changed so many people's lives around the world. And join the movement if you haven't already, and preferably do it through Tom's programs.
Yes.
All right, cool. Well, we're rapidly kind of getting past the hour mark now. So
I know.
Was there anything else you wanted to shout out about what you're working on?
Yeah, well, I suppose a couple of shout outs is obviously, come and, have a look at our website, we're on LinkedIn most of the time. It's tomteachers.tech. We are offering these intro to coding. We're also going into companies and teaching employees just about their tech stack, and trying to build an empathy bridge between technical and non-technical roles. So if you're looking for something like that, please come and have a chat. And if you are interested in a part-time coding course, come and have a chat to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always looking to have a chat to anyone, no matter what. And then finally, Zopa are looking all the time for great tech talent. And like I said, I've been at this company for 6.5, 7 years, and the only reason I'm still at that company is it is a brilliant company to work for. It is very passionate about, we only employ people who are passionate about helping others. We have a fantastic culture, and we're looking to invest in great people. So yeah, definitely, not just in front end development, we have tech roles all across the spectrum. So just have a look.
Fantastic. And I think that's a ringing endorsement. All you would have to say is, I'm an experienced developer. I work in the UK market and haven't left this job in nearly 7 years.
Exactly.
That's how you know they're doing something right.
Yeah, there is a reason. I would never have dreamt it when I joined. But, it stood the test of time, in an industry where you can change very quickly. You don't have to stick in a job for so long. The fact I've been there just, to me, proves it is a great place to work.
Fantastic. And I just want to thank you as well for making the trip up here.
Yeah.
I know it's a holiday as well, but it's awesome to record the podcast in person as well. And I hope the listeners have enjoyed it as well. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Cameron. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Fantastic. And thank you as well, listener, for tuning into this special episode of The Code Career, live and in the studio, which definitely isn't my kitchen / front room. I hope you enjoyed the show and have a great week. Happy coding.